The courtroom session that unfolded on that significant day carried a weight that every observer present could feel from the moment proceedings commenced. After years of legal battles, adjournments, appeals, and sustained political controversy, the case involving Nnamdi Kanu had arrived at what many anticipated might become a turning point. Government representatives and members of his legal team were reportedly engaged in discussions surrounding a possible settlement arrangement, one that could, in theory, bring the protracted legal dispute toward a form of resolution. What emerged from those discussions, however, was not a conclusion. It was a confrontation. At the heart of the proposed arrangement sat a single condition, one that would come to define the entire session. According to the discussions presented before the court, Kanu's release would be contingent on his permanent and public withdrawal from every form of agitation connected to the Biafra cause. The proposal was unambiguous in its scope. He would be required to discontinue all public broadcasts, interviews, political mobilization activities, and any statement or declaration supporting the secession of any part of Nigeria. The condition extended beyond ordinary bail restrictions or temporary legal prohibitions. It reportedly demanded a complete and lifelong disengagement from separatist advocacy in all its forms. The Kenya dimension. The proposed arrangement also reportedly addressed the circumstances surrounding Kanu's arrest and transfer from Kenya back to Nigeria, an issue that had remained unresolved at the center of several legal arguments advanced by his defense team over the years. Lawyers representing him had consistently challenged the legality of the transfer process, raising questions connected to extraordinary rendition, jurisdictional authority, constitutional rights, and whether due process had been properly observed during the operation that brought him back to Nigerian custody. Given the unresolved nature of those controversies, the proposed settlement allegedly included provisions for his relocation back to Kenya as part of the broader arrangement, along with compensation connected to the legal and diplomatic disputes arising from his arrest and cross-border transfer. Yet despite the complexity of those ancillary provisions, the central issue before the court remained unchanged throughout the session. Every other element of the proposal orbited one fixed demand: permanent silence on Biafra agitation. The atmosphere inside the court. Court observers who were present during the proceedings reported that the courtroom remained calm during the initial presentation of the proposal, though attention was described as extraordinarily focused. Members of both legal teams reviewed documents, exchanged brief consultations, and maintained visible composure as the full implications of the proposed conditions became clear. Security personnel maintained close observation throughout, understandably so, given the intense public sensitivity surrounding a case that had captured national attention for years. The proceedings involving Nnamdi Kanu had, for a significant period, represented one of the most politically charged legal matters in Nigerian public life. The case had generated sustained debate across political formations, legal circles, human rights organizations, and communities connected to Biafra agitation, both within Nigeria and among diaspora populations scattered across different continents. Multiple court rulings, appellate decisions, and legal interpretations had already shaped public understanding of the matter long before the latest courtroom discussion emerged. Each development had been followed closely, argued over, and analyzed by observers who understood that the outcome carried implications extending well beyond the individual at the center of the proceedings. Inside the session, government representatives reportedly maintained that national security and territorial unity remained the primary justifications behind the proposed condition. Their legal presentation conveyed the position that continued separatist agitation constituted a direct challenge to Nigerian sovereignty and national stability. From that standpoint, any release arrangement that did not include a permanent end to public separatist advocacy would be insufficient. The proposal, they reportedly argued, was designed not as punishment, but as a precondition for sustained political peace. The rejection. Lawyers representing Kanu listened carefully during the initial presentation without interruption, as observers noted the intensity inside the courtroom growing steadily. The proposal was not, by any reading, a routine legal matter. It reached into the terrain of political identity, public conviction, and the question of what a person may be compelled to surrender in exchange for personal liberty. After consultations with his legal team, Kanu reportedly rose and addressed the court directly. His response went immediately to the core of the matter. He questioned, according to the courtroom account, why his freedom should be made conditional upon the surrender of political opinions he had publicly defended throughout his years of activism. He reportedly argued that political disagreement and advocacy connected to self-determination should not be treated as criminal conduct simply because those views challenged prevailing state authority. He stated clearly, according to observers present, that he could not accept conditions requiring him to abandon a cause he had spent years publicly articulating and defending. The atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted perceptibly following that response. Observers described the moment as one of the most significant exchanges the case had yet produced, because the rejection did not simply close a negotiating chapter. It exposed the fundamental tension at the heart of the entire matter, the collision between state authority and political conviction, between national unity imperatives and constitutional freedoms. The constitutional dimensions. Kanu's response also reportedly addressed the Kenya issue directly, reinforcing arguments his legal team had advanced repeatedly over the years. He allegedly maintained that unresolved legal questions surrounding the circumstances of his transfer could not be dissolved through a political settlement arrangement, regardless of whatever compensation or relocation provisions were offered alongside it. He reportedly argued that legal accountability for the processes used to return him to Nigeria remained a matter requiring proper judicial resolution, not political compromise. As his position became fully clear, court observers noted that the discussion inside the courtroom began moving away from the possibility of a negotiated settlement and returning to the terrain of constitutional confrontation. Issues connected to freedom of expression, political association, constitutional rights, and the legal limits of separatist advocacy under Nigerian law came back to the forefront of proceedings. Legal analysts present reportedly observed that the session had evolved beyond a dispute about detention or release. It had become a wider constitutional argument about the boundaries of political expression, the conditions under which the state may restrict public advocacy, and the rights of citizens who hold views in fundamental tension with official government positions. Government lawyers reportedly maintained their arguments in support of the proposed arrangement, contending that the restriction against future separatist advocacy was a proportionate and necessary measure aimed at reducing political tension and preventing renewed instability. They reportedly argued before the court that continued public agitation for the separation of Nigerian territory represented a genuine national security concern, with implications extending beyond the individual case. Their position held that the proposed condition offered an opportunity for peaceful resolution of a dispute that had already consumed significant legal and political resources over many years. Kanu's defense team rejected that framing comprehensively. According to the courtroom account, they argued that constitutional rights and political freedoms could not be permanently surrendered as conditions attached to personal liberty, and that the nature of the proposed restriction raised serious questions about the boundaries of state power under the Nigerian constitution. The proceedings reportedly highlighted, with unusual clarity, the continuing national debate surrounding self-determination, state authority, and the legal status of separatist advocacy within the constitutional framework that governs political expression in Nigeria. The national resonance. Outside the court premises, supporters and journalists gathered in significant numbers, waiting for information from inside the proceedings. Security presence around the court complex remained strong throughout the session, reflecting the level of public interest and political sensitivity surrounding the case. When news of the rejection of the proposed conditions began to spread, reactions emerged from across the political and legal spectrum. Some observers viewed Kanu's refusal as a principled defense of political conviction and constitutional rights, an assertion that personal freedom purchased through permanent political silence would amount to no genuine freedom at all. Others interpreted the rejection differently, viewing it as a decision to continue confrontation over a matter that had the potential to move toward resolution. Those divergent readings reflected the broader divisions that had always surrounded the case, divisions not merely about Nnamdi Kanu as an individual, but about the larger questions of nationhood, political identity, and the rights of communities to pursue self-determination through public advocacy. Inside the courtroom, the judge reportedly maintained order throughout the proceedings, allowing both parties time to present their positions fully and directing further legal submissions on the constitutional questions the session had raised. The rejection of the proposed arrangement had significantly altered the trajectory of the proceedings. What had appeared, at the outset of the session, to carry the possibility of a negotiated conclusion had become instead a renewed and sharpened legal confrontation. Toward prolonged legal battle. As the session drew toward its close, both legal teams reportedly returned to detailed constitutional arguments rather than settlement discussions. The government's representatives defended the national security rationale for the proposed condition. Kanu's lawyers continued pressing their constitutional objections and the outstanding legal questions connected to the manner of his return to Nigeria. The judge reportedly scheduled further proceedings after hearing the arguments advanced on both sides, signaling that the matter would continue through extended litigation rather than moving quickly toward resolution. By the time security officials escorted participants from the courtroom, one conclusion had already established itself clearly in the minds of observers who had followed the proceedings throughout the session. The possibility of ending the Nnamdi Kanu case quietly through a negotiated release arrangement had become substantially more remote. The case had returned, with full force, to the terrain of legal confrontation, constitutional debate, and the long unresolved questions surrounding the legality of his transfer from Kenya, the charges brought against him, and the broader national conversation about political expression and the boundaries of separatist advocacy in Nigeria. The courtroom had not produced a settlement, it had produced a statement, and across the country, in legal chambers, political gatherings, and among communities that had followed every stage of this case with intense personal investment, that statement would now be debated, analyzed, and argued over in the days and weeks ahead.